One awkward second can make a normal room feel painfully overexposed. The car is quiet, the chat is closed, the smile has already left your face, and still one small moment keeps revisiting. The extra laugh, the fast yes, the split second where you swallowed what you actually felt and kept the tone light. If you know this feeling, the confusing part is that nothing obviously terrible happened. The conversation may have looked smooth from the outside. You were agreeable. You kept things easy. You helped the room stay comfortable. So why does your body feel as if the exchange is still going? As if some invisible part of you never actually left? Why does relief stay just out of reach, even after you did everything right? This is where people-pleasing becomes hard to spot. It rarely announces itself in the moment. It can look like being thoughtful and flexible, and mature and low maintenance. Then later, when the door shuts or the phone screen goes dark, your mind starts editing the scene. Maybe that pause meant they were annoyed. Maybe that joke landed wrong. Maybe your message sounded cold. One small cue starts feeling bigger than it is. And suddenly, there is an audience in your head long after the real audience is gone. That private retelling is not a sign that you are weak, dramatic, or broken. It is often what happens when a conversation stayed polite on the surface, while something more important went missing underneath. Part of you is waiting for relief, but relief cannot fully land when the price of keeping things smooth was leaving yourself out of the exchange. The mind keeps returning to the scene because it can feel a tension it has not named yet. And that name matters. Once the hidden pattern comes into focus, the aftermath starts to shrink. The feeling is still real, but it becomes less personal, less like proof that you failed some invisible social test. That is the tension, worth slowing down before the explanation arrives. So what exactly happens in those ordinary moments when a soft smile settles the room for everyone else and quietly leaves the charge for you to carry afterward? That is why the next section stays with those ordinary seconds after the slip, when the room is still mostly quiet and your interpretation starts getting louder. Some conversations get smoothed over so quickly that no one sees the charge until you are alone. Picture the meeting table, the half-cold coffee, the little pause after someone says, "Could you just handle this one too?" A few eyes lift. You feel the opening. In less than a second you smile, give that soft little laugh and say, "Yeah, I can do that." The room relaxes right away. Chairs shift. The next agenda item begins. On the surface, your answer worked. It kept things light. It protected everyone from awkwardness. It solved the room. But then the meeting ends, and the cost shows up somewhere private. Back at your desk, your chest feels strangely tight. Your energy drops, as if the afternoon got heavier, in one small sentence. You stare at the new task and feel irritation, guilt, and a low, dull sadness all at once. Why am I this drained? It was just a normal exchange. I smiled. I was nice. Nothing bad even happened. That mismatch is the whole experience. Outwardly, the moment looked easy. Inwardly, something important got pushed aside. Maybe you were already overloaded. Maybe you did not want to agree. Maybe the truest answer was, "I can't today," or "I need to think about it." But the faster instinct was to keep the air calm. So the no never got to exist out loud. It stayed in your body instead. The same trade happens in quieter places. Your family asks when you are finally visiting, and you laugh like the question is harmless. A message lights up your phone late at night. "Can you talk?" You type back, "Of course," while your eyes burn and your shoulders sink. In each case, the reward is immediate. No conflict, no disappointed face, no heavy silence. The relief is real, but it is short-term relief borrowed against your own limits. That is why the conversation keeps going after it ends. Not because you are dramatic. Not because you are weak. Because part of you had to disappear for the moment to stay smooth. And the body notices when that happens. It notices the swallowed no, the extra warmth, the effort it took to make everything feel easy for everyone else. Politeness can hide that move so well that even you call it kindness. Sometimes it is kindness, Sometimes it is self-abandonment, wearing good manners. And when that pattern repeats often enough, approval stops feeling optional. It starts feeling like safety. That is the next piece to look at. Because once being liked feels like protection, the mind does not stop working when the conversation does. That is why the next section can name the pattern clearly, instead of leaving it inside the flinch. Some conversations end in real time, but your nervous system keeps them open. That usually happens when approval is doing more than helping you feel liked. It is helping you feel safe. If a smile, a quick yes, a soft laugh, or a careful tone has become the way you prevent conflict, disappointment, or distance, then your brain does not treat those moves like small social choices. It treats them like protection. And once protection is on the line, the mind does not relax just because the words are over. So after the meeting, the family call, the text exchange, the brain starts checking the room again from memory. Did that pause mean something? Why did they look away right there? Was that joke too much? Should you have added one more sentence? The body is already in the car, in the kitchen, in the shower. But some part of you is still standing in front of that person, waiting for a sign that the moment is truly safe to leave. This is where the pattern gets confusing. The feeling is private, but it starts sounding public. One small cue begins to feel bigger than the whole conversation. That is the spotlight effect in plain language. Your inner surge makes one moment feel far more visible and decisive than the evidence really shows. Then attention bias joins in. Attention begins leaning too hard on the one unread message, the one flat okay, the one blink of silence, while everything ordinary gets pushed out of frame. And because the brain is trying to protect you, it keeps threat scanning. It keeps asking, what did I miss? What changed? Where is the danger hiding? In everyday life, that can look so ordinary you barely notice it. You close the chat, then open it again to check the last line. You private retelling someone's face while the elevator doors shut. You hear a harmless pause, and by the time you reach the parking lot, it has grown into a public story. Not because you are dramatic. Not because you are secretly self-absorbed. Because the brain is trying to turn uncertainty into safety, and it would rather overread the moment than risk underreading it. That is also why people-pleasing can feel so exhausting after the fact. The conversation may have stayed smooth on the surface, but your system is still trying to confirm that the smoothness worked. If approval has become a stand-in for safety, then ambiguity feels dangerous for longer than it should. Even a perfectly ordinary interaction can keep echoing, because your mind is not only remembering it, it is auditing it. And this is the part that softens the whole picture. The heavy feeling afterward may not be proof that everyone saw something bad. It may be your body finishing a stress response that had no room to finish, while you were busy being easy, agreeable, and okay. The feeling is real, but real feeling is not the same as real danger, and it is not the same as a settled public story. Once that becomes visible, the next question gets clearer too. If the room felt huge inside your mind, what did other people actually notice? A conversation can be over, and one tiny cue can keep acting like evidence long after everyone has gone back to their day. Picture the office kitchen after a meeting. You said yes to one more task than you wanted, smiled so no one would hear the strain in your voice, and tried to sound easy at the end. Then your manager glanced down at the table. A coworker answered you a little too quickly, or maybe a little too flat. An hour later, the message you sent still shows unread. By the time you are in the car or standing at the sink that night, those small moments have merged into one story. They noticed. They heard the resentment. They saw the fake smile. The room changed because of me. That is the part people-pleasing rarely warns you about. The conversation may have asked for 10 seconds of politeness, but the private retelling asks for the rest of your evening. And if this feels familiar, notice how specific the mind becomes with very little evidence. One glance becomes disapproval. One pause becomes awkward silence. One unread message becomes social punishment. The private feeling is so sharp that it starts casting shadows on everything around it. This is close to the spotlight effect in ordinary life. What feels huge inside starts looking public, even when the outside evidence is thin. The case matters, because most rooms are far less focused on us than our nervous system suggests. Your manager may have looked down because she was checking the next agenda item. Your coworker's tone may have changed because he was already thinking about his own deadline. The unread message may be sitting under 6 others, while someone rushes between meetings. None of that means your discomfort is fake. It means your discomfort is not a reliable head count of how many people were watching. Research on embarrassment and social anxiety keeps finding a version of the same pattern. People tend to overestimate how much others notice their tension, mistakes, and awkward moments. From the inside, your reaction is loud, immediate, and impossible to miss. From the outside, other people usually catch fragments, if they catch anything at all. They see a face, a sentence, a pause. They do not automatically inherit the whole storm you felt while saying it. That is why memory private retelling can be so convincing. It does not just revisit the scene. It edits the scene until every neutral detail starts leaning in one direction. The mind says, "Look at the pattern," when really it may be looking at a pile of ambiguous moments glued together by fear. And when a real social judgment is happening, it usually leaves a heavier trail than that. Not one delayed reply, not one glance at a screen, usually something clearer, repeated, and concrete. So the relief is simple, even if it takes practice to believe. Private tension is not the same thing as public attention. You may be feeling the aftershock of the moment, not seeing the room more accurately, which makes the next question very practical. What can you do in the brief second after the conversation ends, before the private retelling turns that feeling into a public story? Some conversations end in real time and then keep living in the hallway. You walk away, reach the parked car, look down at the phone screen, catch your face in the bathroom mirror, and something inside starts writing the story too fast. That pause when they look down, the joke you softened, the yes you gave before checking yourself. In a few seconds, a feeling becomes a conclusion. I made it weird. I asked too much. They're disappointed. And this is the moment that matters, because the drain does not grow only from what happened. It grows from what your mind rushes to decide happened. So when that first wave hits, do not solve the whole interaction. Go smaller. Think in 4 quiet words. Interrupt, then name the moment, widen the frame, and check the evidence. First, interrupt. Not with a speech. Not with fake confidence. Just with a clean stop. Wait. Something activated in me. Catch the moment before the feeling turns into a conclusion. That tiny interruption matters, because it keeps discomfort from disguising itself as certainty. Then name what actually happened in plain language. I smiled when I wanted a minute. I agreed before I checked what I wanted. I am worried they read my pause the wrong way. Naming it this way is gentler than blaming yourself and more honest than pretending nothing happened. It also reveals an important difference. Kindness is choosing care. Appeasement is abandoning yourself to keep the room smooth. Those are not the same thing, even if they can look identical from the outside. Your body often feels the difference before your mind is willing to say it out loud. After that, widen the frame. Ask what was yours and what was never yours. Your responsibility was your tone, your honesty, your respect. Their expression, their silence, their hidden interpretation, their private mood. That is not something you can mind read into accuracy. People-pleasing becomes so draining because it quietly assigns you a job no human can do. Manage the whole atmosphere. Prevent every possible disappointment. Leave no room for someone else's reaction. But that is not responsibility. That is overresponsibility wearing a polite face. And this is where relief starts to become usable. Discomfort is real, but discomfort is not danger. Uncertainty is real, but uncertainty is not proof that you failed. Then come back to evidence small enough to trust. Did they actually say they were upset? Or did they just end the conversation normally? Is the message unanswered, or has it only been 12 minutes? Did one glance become a room-wide judgment in your head, even though no one else gave you any sign of that story? One pause is not a public story. One unread text is not a rejection. Private tension is not the same thing as public attention. Most people noticed less than the feeling predicts. What changes when you catch this pattern is subtle, but it is powerful. You stop treating every uneasy aftertaste as a message from reality. Sometimes it is simply the cost of being easy when you are not at ease. Sometimes it is sadness about not protecting your own boundary in a small moment. Sometimes it is just your system taking longer to settle. None of that means you were foolish. It means the room was smaller than the story your private retelling created. And once that becomes visible, the next step opens naturally. Learning how a conversation can finally end in real time. A conversation can finally end in real time when pleasing is no longer the thing trying to keep you safe. That does not make you harsh. It does not make you careless. It only changes the assignment. Instead of trying to leave every room with everyone perfectly settled, you begin letting honesty, limits, and imperfect reactions exist together. Picture the small moment after you say, "I can't stay late tonight," or "I need to think about that before I answer," and then you stop. No quick smile to smooth it over. No extra joke. No rescue sentence. The room does what rooms do. Someone pauses. Someone looks down at their cup. A reply comes back, a little flatter than you hoped. For a second, your body still lights up. But the whole exchange is no longer being treated like an emergency just because it was not perfectly easy. The same thing can happen over text. You send a clear message without wrapping it in apology after apology. The typing bubble appears, disappears, appears again. 10 old versions of you would have rushed back in with more softness, more explanation, more proof that you are still good. This version waits, not because the feeling is gone, but because the feeling is no longer in charge of the story. A delayed reply can stay a delayed reply. A brief silence can stay a brief silence. One person's passing disappointment does not automatically become a public story on your character. That is why the drain begins to change. People-pleasing makes you carry 2 conversations at once. The one that happened, and the one where you keep repairing how you might have been received. You private retelling your face, your tone, that one sentence, that one pause near the doorway, as if the right edit could finally buy rest. But rest usually does not come from a better edit. It comes from no longer abandoning yourself to make the moment feel safer than it really needed to be. And something quieter starts happening. Your yes means more because it is not squeezed out by fear. Your no stops echoing for so long because it was allowed to be real. Even awkward moments get smaller. They stop expanding into evidence that you failed at being likable. They become what they usually were in the first place. A human exchange with a little friction in it. That is the part many people never get told. The goal was never to become untouched. You may still walk to the car with a tight chest. You may still hear the conversation again while washing dishes or staring at the phone screen in a dark room. But now there is space between the feeling and the conclusion. Enough space to remember that warmth is not the same as appeasement, that care is not the same as self-erasure, and that one imperfect moment does not tell the whole truth. A conversation gets less draining when you no longer ask it to prove that you are safe, good, and impossible to dislike. It was one room, one exchange, one small moment between imperfect people. The feeling is real, but the public story is still unfinished. The durable lens is simple. Private tension is not the same thing as public attention, and one steadier question can stop a feeling from becoming a harsh public story too quickly. Carry forward one calmer question. What actually happened, and what part of the story arrived from the feeling itself? That matters, because a smaller first interpretation gives the room a chance to stay human.